Good morning, guys. This is the last lesson going over, or that we're going to go over in chapter 11. So after spring break, we will be moving into a new chapter. So I hope you guys enjoy your spring break. I know you have been working really, really hard. I know it's been a change, so you definitely deserve a break from schoolwork. You guys won't have any math assignments over spring break, so enjoy it as much as you possibly can right now, and then after break, we will continue on. So we have been talking about percent times whole equals part. So at first we talked about finding part, yesterday we talked about finding percent, and now today we're going to talk about finding the whole. So yesterday we kind of rearranged the formula so you could find the percent. Now we're going to rearrange the formula so we can find whole. So it's already on the screen, you guys can see it. So it's the same thing that we did yesterday, kind of dividing whole and moving it to the other side. So we did the same thing with percent today. So we have whole equals part divided by percent. So going over kind of the opening question or first example, it says 30% of a bodybuilder's calories come from protein. Suppose the bodybuilder eats 840 calories from protein on a certain day. How many total calories does she eat that day? So notice, first of all, 30% is written out in word form. So just a reminder, when you guys are looking through the questions, please read the whole question. Don't just skim through to try to find numbers. It's super important when you're doing this that you guys look at the words so you know what is the whole, what is the part, which kind of determines how you're going to use the formula, and which part you need to be looking for. Obviously, percent is one that's pretty easy. It's either going to say percent or it'll have the percent sign behind it, but it won't always be in number form, so just make sure you guys look for that. So I know that I'm looking for whole. Again, it doesn't tell me this is the whole, this is part, this is a percent. You kind of have to read into the actual words to figure out what is what. So in this lesson, we're looking for whole, so that's what you're going to be finding the whole time. But the reason behind it is it says how many total calories. When we're talking about the total of something, that's the whole part of it. So it says she eats 840 calories just from protein, and it's asking you the total number. So 840 is going to be your part, and then your percent is going to be 30%. So just as a reminder, we don't just divide by a percent. You can't divide by a percent. You need to change it to a decimal before you divide. So I'm going to change slides, still going over the same question, but so we can talk about how to divide 840 by 30%. So looking at this, I need to first change my 30% to a decimal. So changing a percent to a decimal, so I have 30%, and then I am going to change it to a decimal by, it's kind of really just dividing by 100, but the way that you can do that is really just moving the decimal 2 places to the left. So my decimal would be 0.30, maybe, if it lets me. So my decimal would be 0.30. So I'm really taking 840 and dividing it by 0.3 or 0.30. Either way, when you are dividing numbers that have a decimal in them, remember that you can't divide by a decimal. You have to divide by a whole number. It's been a really long time since we've talked about this and really have worked with this in class. So when you do this, on the outside, I have to move my decimal over one place to make it a whole number 3. When I move a decimal in the outside number, I also have to move the decimal on the inside number. So I am going to move, remember, if you have a whole number, your decimal is kind of just at the end It's not always shown there, but if I have $840, I have 840 in a decimal and then 2 zeros following it. So think about money if you need to think about it in that terms. So my decimal is really right here. And since I moved one place over here, I would need to move one place here, which means I need to add a 0. So the new problem that I'm working with is actually 8,400 divided by 3. So I'm going to erase this really quickly and rewrite it so we have a little more space to do that problem. Okay. So I now have 8,400 divided by 3. And then I'm just going to divide like normal. So 3 goes into 8 2 times. I'm going to get 6 and subtract and get 2. Bring down my 4. 3 goes into 24 exactly 8 times. Then I'm going to get a 0. I know that 3 is going to go into 0 0 times. And then I would bring down again and get 0. Just because you know that 3 is going to go into 0 3 times doesn't mean you can just stop. If there are numbers right here, there are 4 digits, you should have 4 digits in your answer. You can't just end at 28 and ignore the rest of the problem. So make sure you add those zeros in. So the whole number that I got is 2,800. So that is the total number of calories that she ate in that day, or it's the whole number. In the question, it asks you to find C, so this is what C is equal to, or you can just put whole is equal to, or just the number, as long as I know what your answer is. So this is the slide that we are on. Okay. And it says 25% of Y is 100. So this is how the majority of the problems are going to look on your homework, or when I give you questions like this. It's not really going to be as many word problems. It will just be the 25% of Y is 100, or whatever percent of a random letter is something. So yesterday I mentioned about whole and part and other words that are used for them being of and is. So kind of the same thing as yesterday. Of is the whole, part is. So in this question, obviously 25% is the percent because it has the percent sign. Of Y is going to be the whole, and I know that specifically in this lesson because we're finding whole. So Y is what I'm trying to find, so that's going to be my whole. And then is 100 is the part, so 100 is going to be my part. So when I write this problem, I have whole, or you can put Y is equal to, if you want to actually solve for the letter, is equal to 100 divided by 0.25 is what that's going to end up being as a decimal when I do that. So again, can't divide by a percent, you need to divide by a decimal. So on this, whenever you see a question like this, please don't just automatically answer it. I know a lot of you see 100 divided by 25 right now, and you're probably thinking 4 because we talk about quarters a lot. But the problem that you're actually doing is 100 divided by 0.25, which is not 4. So don't just look at it and automatically answer the question if you think you know what it is, or just take the percent sign off and do 100 divided by 25, because you're not going to get the correct answer. You need to make sure you're changing it to a decimal. So when I do that in this problem, I am going to take 100 and divide it by, you can't see that color. So I'm going to take 100 and divide it by 0.25. So again, I need to move the decimal because I can't divide by a decimal. I have to divide by a whole number. So I'm going to move it 2 places, which means I need to move it 2 places after 100 or add 2 zeros. Okay, so 25 can't go into 1, 25 can't go into 10, 25 can go into 100 4 times, and it's going to give me exactly 100, and then I would subtract. 25 is going to go into 0 times, and then 25 will also go into 0 times. So your answer is not just 4, it's actually 400. Okay, so just make sure when you're doing these questions, you read it. Don't just try to take the shortcut and answer it in your head or get rid of the percent sign. You need to actually change it to a decimal and make sure you're dividing by decimals correctly, okay? And then looking at the last question that I'm going to talk to you about, these are examples of a word problem. You do have one in your homework that looks similar to this in terms of it has a chart, and then we'll give you some questions to answer from the chart. So this table specifically is showing the approximate percent of hockey players in a league by their country of origin. So there's Canada, United States, Sweden, Russian, and other. So the very first question, suppose 54 players from Sweden will play this season. How many total players will play this season? So you have to find the percentage from the table that is given to you. So it's talking about Sweden. 9% come from Sweden. So my problem in this, in order to find the whole, I would have 54 divided by 0.09. That's a really bad 9, sorry. So all I did was change 9% to a decimal already. It was moving the decimal 2 places. I'm not gonna divide it out for you guys, but you would find the answer, more so showing you how to set up the word problem. So then number 2, and I just wanted to show you this one because it's a little bit different, and I think you have one like this on your homework. So it says, suppose that this season there are 70 players from Sweden and Russia combined. How many total players will there be? So I have my whole, that's what I'm trying to find, and then there are 70 players from both Sweden and Russia. So what I'm actually going to do is, in order to find the percent of that, I need to take Sweden's percentage and Russia's percentage and add them together. So I can see right here, Sweden had 9%. We just found that in the last question. And then Russia has 5%. So I'm going to add those together and get 14%. And if I were to change that to a decimal, I would change it to 0.14, and then that would be the problem that you are solving. So make sure that you're reading the question, you're answering what it's saying. So if it says something is combined, you can add percents together because they're the same. If it's like a percent and a decimal, you cannot add those together. You would need to change the decimal to a percentage and then add, or if you wanted to change the percent to a decimal and then add the decimals together, you can. Just remember they have to be the same in order to add them together, okay? So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. I will be more than happy to answer them for you. And I hope you guys have a great spring break as much as possible. And we will get into a different lesson and different chapter whenever we come back. Bye, guys.